Hello, my name is Ken Wilson. I'm an author of English language teaching materials and I'm a teacher trainer. And I came to Tehran in 2013 in November and I gave a weekend of workshops. So, hello to anybody in the audience who attended those workshops. And before I go any further, just like to say thank you very much to Bita Resai, the president of IELTA, for giving me the opportunity to talk to you about professional development in English language teaching. The first thing to say is that you are attending a conference and therefore you're doing the best thing that you can do in terms of your professional development. Attending a conference is absolutely the best way to go about professional development, but always remember that there are two sides to attending a conference. The first part is attending the lectures and the workshops and picking up from the input. But remember that meeting your colleagues and discussing with them their working circumstances, any challenges they find in their working life, this is equally as important as an aspect of professional development. Some people do say the best part of going to a conference is the coffee breaks, and that could be true for many, many people. It's very, very important to get a chance to talk to your colleagues, to people who work in the same circumstances that you do. It's wonderful to listen to experts, especially experts who come in from other countries, but it is your country and it's your working circumstances, and maybe the people from outside might not know as much about that as they should, and that's why the question and answer sessions at a conference are really, really important. Any chance you get at the conference to question experts, particularly experts from other countries, to make sure that what they're saying is relevant to the work that you're doing. Because for every teacher teaching any subject, but particularly a language, there are certain aspects which the realities that have to be faced up. There's the classroom realities. Just an example, when a lecturer says, so this point you can put your students in pairs. Well, I've worked in China where high school classes have routinely between 70 and 80 students in the class. 70 and 80 students. I think it's important that a visiting lecturer knows that about China before they say put your students in pairs, because a Chinese teacher will say, if I put my students in pairs, the noise is deafening. That's just an example of classroom realities. Classroom realities. What your classroom realities may be. For somebody like me, working in the UK as a native English speaker teacher with multilingual, multicultural students in the class, the chances are I will be teaching maybe just 12 students in a class. A very different situation from most people's circumstances. The fact that your students all speak the same language, that they're monolingual, this is also important. When you're asking people, if an expert says, tell your students to turn to each other and discuss the transport system in their towns, which is, I remember, an activity I remember seeing in a book once. Your students come from the same town. You cannot realistically expect them to turn to each other and discuss something which happens in their town as if it's different. These are classroom realities. There are social realities, the realities of what people can and can't do with each other in the classroom. These are different in every country, and it's important, again, to bear those in mind when you're trying to change the way you do your classes. And the most important one of all are the linguistic realities. If you're a speaker of Spanish, then when you're learning English, there is a very, very high cognate level, and of course you have the same Roman script. If you're teaching Iranian students, there is not the same high cognate level, and you're not using a Roman script. These things are linguistic realities. It's important when you're doing professional development that the experts who you listen to or the experts that you read should understand these aspects of your work. If you can't get to a conference, what other aspects of professional development are there? Well, of course, there's reading. And there are so many articles and books that you can read these days. And the difference between now and when I first started teaching more than 40 years ago is that, of course, there's so much available online. And I think the online aspect of professional development is also extremely important. I think it's good that some of the most important people in our business as teachers of English. They have websites, they have blogs, and they regularly make themselves available through their websites, through their blogs, writing articles. And the difference nowadays, for me, reading an article in an educational journal 40 years ago, I could write a letter and send it to the journal, and the journal would then print it. But when you read a blog by somebody who's famous in our business, who's an expert, you have every right to challenge what they say, and they, usually these days, the best ones, will reply. This is the biggest advantage now that we have over many, many years ago. When we're reading what the experts in the business are saying, we can immediately write a comment underneath their blog, underneath their article, and very often we'll get a reply. This is fantastic. So always take that chance, and never, never feel that somehow this expert is somehow too important to approach like that. And remember, international native speaker presenters and trainers like me, we are from a particular society. We then go around to many other places and say what we think, talk about our the work. We are not experts in those places. We are experts in more general terms. And so you have every right, as I said, either in person at a conference like this, or by following a blog, by reading articles, to tell people what you think about their thoughts and ask them to relate their thoughts to your working circumstances. Your working circumstances are the most important for you. And you have every right to ask an expert to consider the work that you do from your point of view. So that's the first thing I think is important, and it's a fantastic opportunity these days to read material online. Of course, there are still excellent resource books, really, really good books. Books are still the main source of professional development, and good fun to read. But the interactive quality, the interactive possibilities that are given by blogs, by websites, is absolutely fantastic. And I also think in more general terms, social media is an extremely good place to think about professional development. If you belong to some kind of social media forum, I'm not going to suggest any particular names. The important thing is you can very easily connect with teachers in other circumstances, in other societies, and you can find yourself involved in discussions with large groups of teachers about a particular subject. As you know, on Twitter and on Facebook, there are various forums where people can, which you can join, and as I'll keep repeating it, your circumstances are special to you, and you have every right to present your circumstances and to present how your life is, how your working life is, to the people on these forums, and to get some reaction from an international audience. Hopefully, in a situation like that, you can find out some really important and useful stuff. So to go back to the beginning, I think you're at a conference. A conference is, without question, the best form of professional development, and you should take advantage of being there. Ask the experts to justify what they've said in terms of your working circumstances, and take the opportunity to speak to other teachers from your society working in different circumstances. You will find you have so many challenges in common. Let's not use the word problems. Teaching is a very challenging profession. It's very, very hard work. But I also think it is one that offers great benefits, great kind of benefits to your morale. I have a very good friend who's a dentist, and I tell her that what's so nice about students is that, you know, when you have a nice class with your students, that the atmosphere is excellent. There's a wonderful buzz about people. It doesn't happen every day, but the times that it happens, they're very, very important and very good for your morale as a teacher. And my dentist friend said, that doesn't really happen when you're a dentist. And as I mentioned in one of my talks recently, I went back to my old school, my grammar school, near Manchester in the north of England, to what they call the old boys' dinner, when all the former pupils of this grammar school attend a dinner. The grammar school actually closed in 1975, so you can imagine that the old boys are really quite old now. And I was asked to give a speech at the Old Boys Dinner. And I said, I'm going to talk about teachers. And I said, I want to talk first of all about the teachers who inspire you. And I mentioned the name of my history teacher. His name was Ernie Ashton. And I said, I want to talk about teachers like Ernie Ashton. As soon as I mentioned his name, the place erupted in applause. Ernie Ashton was a history teacher who taught some of the people in that room 50 years ago. And yet the mere mention of his name caused an outbreak of applause. And I think it's really worthwhile thinking that the students you're talking to now, the students you're taking now, the students in your classes now, if they meet in 50 years' time and they mention your name and they're all excited to hear your name being mentioned, that's quite a nice thing about being a teacher. As I said, it doesn't happen to dentists. Okay, so you're at the conference, take advantage of the conference. When you're not at the conference, I think it's important to talk to your close colleagues in the school where you work. For a long time, when I was a young teacher in the 1970s, I worked in two different schools. I worked in a private language school and in a state college. And looking back, I realized that while I was working and I worked on the same day very often in these two different institutions. And whenever I went to the teacher's room in the private language school, there would always be somebody sitting there saying, I've got this real problem with one of my students because da da da. And we'd have a discussion. And I realized that when I went to work at the state college, there wasn't really that atmosphere of sharing. And I don't know why. To this day, I don't understand why some of the teachers in the state college didn't want to listen to the thing, nor did they want to share or make suggestions. So I feel very, very fortunate that I worked in the private language school where people did share their thoughts and their opinions. And I think it's very nice if you can create in your own working environment a set of circumstances where people like to share and people like to offer suggestions to each other. That's really important. As I said, on top of that, there is reading. I'm not much of a reader, I have to say. So what I like is we talk about continuing professional development, CPD, but what I quite like is random professional development. Is, for example, to turn on Facebook and to find that some quite big name in our business has written a new blog perhaps about motivation. And I wasn't thinking about motivation until then, and I read the blog. So quite by accident, I find a blog that's quite interesting. Other times, when I want to find out some more about reading skills, and I start following links to reading skills, and I think, this isn't quite what I'm looking for. And it's often the days when I find a piece, an article, or sometimes a video. It's something else I mustn't forget to tell you as well. And it's the ones that you weren't expecting, which are sometimes the best. Yes, one thing I meant to mention as well is that it's very difficult for most teachers to travel to other countries to attend conferences. But some of the major conferences these days, for example, the IATEFL UK conference, which was recently in Birmingham, and next year in April 2017 will be in Glasgow. And these conferences are live streamed. You can actually watch them in real time, the plenaries and many of the workshops. You can actually sign up. It's absolutely free to sign up with IATEFL to become part of their online things that they do. So and IATEFL UK is not the only conference that does that. I think it's worth finding out where the main conferences are. There are good conferences in every country around the world. There's some excellent conferences in Spain, for example, in Brazil. I'm going next week to a conference in Mexico, and then a few weeks after that I'm going to Braz TESOL, and I think I'm right in saying that Braz TESOL live streams its main sessions. And the point is also to go back to IATEFL. IATEFL live streams the main sessions, and then they're available for a long time via the IATEFL website. So you can actually, if you can't get a chance to visit conferences in other countries, you can watch the conferences online or see them recorded sometimes afterwards. As an example, I'd like to recommend that you go to the IATEFL website, IATEFL UK website, Mrs. Rezai will be able to give you the link if you don't know what it is, and watch the plenary talk given just last month in April in Birmingham by a woman called Silvana Richardson. Silvana Richardson. She's actually from Argentina. She's married to a British guy called Richardson. So, and she did the most wonderful plenary about the distinction that we still make between native English speaker teachers and non-native English speaker teachers, and the circumstances that a lot of non-native speaker teachers, the kind of discrimination that they face in certain working circumstances. So I absolutely recommend that the first thing you do is to go onto the IATEFL website. Silvana Richardson's plenary should be available via that website. And to genuinely take every opportunity that you can to watch conferences from other countries. But I'll go back to what I said at the very beginning. You are attending a conference. Being at a real conference is absolutely the best way to go about professional development. And finally, the thing to consider is just to reflect on what you teach all the time, to question what you're doing, to think about at the end of every class, did my class enjoy that? Did I enjoy that? Did I enjoy the experience of the last 45 minutes? And if I didn't, what was the problem? Was it that the students weren't in a good mood? Was it that I wasn't being particularly clear? Or possibly was it the materials that I'm using? And if the materials are generally okay, but some parts of it need to change, how can I change the way I use it? I'm not the best person to talk to about technology, but I do know that in the classroom circumstances, particularly if you're teaching young learners up to the age of about 16, 17, then it really helps to use certain kinds of technology in the classroom when you're presenting materials. But just to make this point again, professional development starts when you question yourself, am I doing this the way I want to do it? Is there anything I want to change? And how can I go about it? And if you think it's about motivation, then go online and find information about motivation. If it's things about your students don't want to speak to each other, then some recommendations for encouraging students to speak. There's a lot of material out there. There's never been a better time to find material online. Anyway, thank you very much for listening to me. It's been a great pleasure speaking to you in Iran. I have excellent memories of my time in your beautiful country. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you.